These WWE wrestlers suffered injuries that altered their lives. Some have lost parts of their body, while others have become paralyzed due to accidents in the ring. Mick Foley became a wrestling icon thanks partly to all the crazy stunts he performed throughout his career. However, all this success came at a cost. While wrestling for WCW, Mick Foley wrestled a match against Vader in Germany. Earlier in the show, some wrestlers said the ropes were too loose, which caused them to be really tight by the time Foley and Vader got into the ring. During the match, Mick Foley dived into the ropes and accidentally got stuck. The tightness of the ropes made it difficult to free himself, but Foley was able to get out. However, the hardcore icon injured his right ear in the process. Then, once he was back in the ring, Vader punched Mick Foley, which caused Foley's ear to fall off. Thankfully, doctors were able to use plastic surgery to help repair it, but the wrestler's ear was never the same. Today, if you see Foley's right ear, you'll notice that it just looks really small compared to the one on his left. Unfortunately though, this isn't the only body-altering injury the WWE Hall of Famer would suffer. Due to years of abuse and insane wrestling spots, like being thrown off Hell in a Cell, Foley's body has taken a beating. He has undergone multiple surgeries and, as a result, walks with a limp. This became quite noticeable when Mick Foley was the Raw General Manager in 2016 and 2017. Despite all this, Foley is an incredibly positive person and still loves wrestling to this very day. When discussing wrestlers with amazing physiques, you must mention Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorf. The man had a body that rivaled Hulk Hogan, but unfortunately, Orndorf would suffer an injury that would take this away. During Mr. Wonderful's time with WWE in the 80s, he suffered a severe injury in his right arm during a weightlifting accident. Paul Orndorf was in a big feud with Hulk Hogan at the time and chose to continue wrestling rather than undergo surgery and fix it. This caused Orndorf to suffer nerve damage in his right arm, forcing him to retire from wrestling. While Orndorf eventually made a return, he suffered from muscle atrophy, which is the wasting or thinning of muscle mass. What happened was Paul Orndorf's right arm became smaller than his left. This became increasingly noticeable as Paul Orndorf's career continued, particularly during his final run in WCW. Despite the body-altering injury, Mr. Wonderful remained in great shape and still looked amazing. During a live pay-per-view event in 1996, William Regal suffered an injury that permanently altered one of his eyes. While wrestling Finlay at Uncensored 1996, the Irishman gave Regal a real punch to the face that fractured William Regal's cheekbone and split his eyelid. In the aftermath, Regal needed 12 stitches in order to fix the wound. Additionally, the injury gave the Englishman a permanent fold in his left eye. Thankfully, it didn't get in his way, and William Regal would go on to become one of the most renowned people in wrestling. A common body alteration that several wrestlers have suffered from is forehead scars. Wrestlers like Devon Dudley, Dusty Rhodes, New Jack, and Abdullah the Butcher have all lived with permanent scars on their heads. The reason for this is due to blading. Whenever a wrestler wants to bleed during a match, they'll use a very small razor blade to cut themselves. They do it in such a way to keep themselves safe, but years of cutting yourself does add up, and that can be seen clearly on the heads of some wrestlers. Blading isn't the only thing that causes scars. For example, Joey Mercury suffered one of the worst looking injuries at Armageddon 2006 when he got smacked in the face by a ladder. Thankfully, Mercury did recover. However, the accident caused permanent damage to his face. Joey Mercury has a scar right between his eyes that is still visible years after the ladder injury. Someone else you have to talk about when mentioning scars is Sabu. The ECW original and death-defying wrestler competed in some of the most extreme wrestling matches in history. Like with Mick Foley, this did cost him. Sabu's body is filled with scars. Part of the reason Sabu looks the way he does is that he didn't have health insurance. Instead, the hardcore wrestler would patch himself up with super glue. This next incident is the saddest of them all. Droz was a former football player turned WWE wrestler. He debuted in 1998, but his career abruptly ended with an accident that altered his entire life. While at a SmackDown event in October 1999, Droz competed in a match against D'Lo Brown. One of Brown's signature moves was a running powerbomb, and he went to perform the move like normal during this match with Droz. However, D'Lo couldn't get a tight enough grip, and Droz landed on his head and neck. As soon as it happened, Droz was rushed to a nearby hospital. Luckily, doctors saved his life, but the wrestling injury left Droz paralyzed and unable to use his legs. Today, he needs to use a wheelchair to move around and take several medications daily. Despite this, Droz is not bitter or upset at D'Lo or anyone. In his own words, "Just because I'm paralyzed and stuck in a wheelchair doesn't mean my life is over. I've learned to live again, and my life is far from over." Besides injuries, another part of wrestling that has altered wrestlers' bodies is steroids. To see what wrestlers who took steroids look like today, watch this video.